Welcome to the Sober Addict Podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Dolce. This podcast is about the fight nobody sees, the thoughts you don't post, the battles that don't look dramatic but feel heavy. If you're sober, trying to get sober, or just tired of fighting your own mind, you're in the right place. Take a breath. You don't have to be strong here. This episode is not meant to be clean or efficient or easy to digest. This episode is me finally telling my story the way it actually exists in my head. Instead of the shortened version I've given people for years so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Because the truth is, my life didn't fall apart all at once. And it definitely didn't get put back together all at once either. It happened slowly, painfully, and in layers. And I won't lie to you, I'm still not put back together fully. I'm still healing, and I'm still fighting. But I promise I will fight with you, and we can heal together. I think that's the part people don't really understand when they hear words like addiction, anxiety, sobriety, or recovery. They think there's a before and an after. They think that there's just some miracle switch that flips, when in reality there isn't. At the beginning of all this, I had everything I ever wanted, or at least everything I thought I wanted. And I don't mean that in a vague, nonchalant way. I mean it quite literally. I had my 3 beautiful kids. I had a fiance. I just bought a beautiful house. I mean, the kind of house that makes you stop and think, okay, this is it. This is the proof that all the work I did was worth it. I remember walking through that house and imagining the future, where the kids would grow up, what holidays would look like, all the parties we could have, the family I could have over, the friends I could have over, what it would feel like to finally exhale and just live life. From the outside, my life looked pretty good. Stable, promising. Like things were finally lining up the way they were supposed to. And that's important, especially for this, because my story doesn't start in chaos. It starts in having something to lose. Not just something to lose, everything to lose. Even back then, though something inside me was never really calm, I didn't know how to relax. I didn't know how to sit still. I didn't know how to just exist without feeling like I needed to be doing something productive. I never stopped. Even when things were going right, my body felt tight. My mind never shut off. I was always thinking about what could go wrong, what needed to be fixed, what responsibility was coming next. I can never leave work at work. I always brought it home with me. And back then I didn't call it anxiety, I called it being driven. I had motivation. I called it being responsible. I called it being a provider. Being a future husband, being a father. I thought all this was something I needed to do, that I was responsible to do. But looking back, I can see that my nervous system never knew how to feel safe. And that's where the drugs came into my life. I want to be honest about this part because honesty is the only thing that's ever helped me. At first, cocaine didn't feel destructive. It felt like relief. It felt like the only time my brain actually slowed down was partying with my fiance or my friends. Feeling social, confident, and loose for a few hours. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about pressure or responsibility or fear. My mind just stopped and shut up. And if you've never had a mind that shuts up, you don't understand how powerful that is. So I justified it. I told myself I worked hard. I told myself I deserved it. I told myself I was still showing up for my life. And because nothing had fallen apart, at least yet, because I still had my house, my kids, my relationship, I believed all of that. That's how addiction really starts. Not with destruction, but with permission. Then there was a day that changed absolutely everything. To give you a little background story, I was obsessed with owning exotic animals like reptiles and things like that. So I would constantly go to the pet store and buy food and decorations and everything that they needed. And one day when I was at the pet store, just a normal day, nothing dramatic, nothing stressful, suddenly my body collapsed. I'm not talking emotionally, I'm talking physically. I remember confusion before fear. My body felt wrong in a way I couldn't even explain. My thoughts slowed down. I couldn't communicate clearly. I literally collapsed on the floor. I couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs. People thought I was having a stroke. But me inside, all I thought was, I'm dying. I remember my fiance screaming my name and my newborn daughter just crying in her car seat. I thought I was dying. I remember the hospital lights, the urgency, the feeling that something irreversible was happening. I remember walking in and a reception nurse asking me a couple questions. I couldn't tell you what the questions were, but all I do remember is her calling a code stroke. Even now, I can feel that moment in my body. After that day, nothing felt safe anymore. Even when the doctors told me I was okay, my body didn't believe them. Every sensation became a threat. My heart racing didn't feel like anxiety, it felt like death. Dizziness didn't feel uncomfortable, it felt catastrophic. Chest tightness didn't feel stressful, it felt final. That was the beginning of the panic. Not stress, not worry, panic. The kind that convinces you something is terribly wrong right now. I stopped using drugs for a while after that. I thought maybe that would fix things. Instead, everything inside got louder. My anxiety exploded. My thoughts raced constantly. Sleep didn't feel safe. Silence didn't feel peaceful. There was a time when I was in the hospital 2 or 3 times a week. I was convinced I was dying. Convinced my heart was failing. Convinced something catastrophic was happening in my body. I remember numerous times where, my kids were there and I had to call the ambulance, call 911. And I remember the look on their face, thinking that their dad's not going to come back home. Being told you're fine when your body is screaming at you does something to your mind. You stop trusting yourself. That's when the agoraphobia started to take over my life. At first, it didn't have a name. I just started avoiding things. Stores, crowds, driving, being far from hospitals. My world slowly got smaller and smaller, not because I wanted it to, but because my body thought it was protecting me. That's what agoraphobia really is. Not fear. It's survival. This is kind of where I started losing people. My fiance watched me change, watched confidence turn into hesitation. She watched fear take over me. And as much as she tried, it became too much. When she left, it didn't make me angry. I couldn't blame her. But it definitely broke me. And it broke me because now I just wasn't scared. I was alone. When I went back to drugs, it wasn't to party like it was before. It wasn't to escape. This time it escalated way too fast. It turned into meth. Heavy use. Constant use. Using just to function. Meth didn't slowly ruin my life. It burned it completely down. I lost jobs. My business started failing. I lost friends, relationships. People I thought would always be there, stopped answering the phone. Some never wanted to talk to me again, and that destroyed me. But what destroyed me the most is I lost my kids. That's the part that still hurts the most. Now, me getting sober was not inspirational. Okay, it was brutal. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't feel peace. I didn't feel clarity. I felt guilt, shame, grief, and fear all at once. I had to learn how to live without escaping myself. That's why I started writing, not because I had answers, but because my mind wouldn't shut up. Writing slowed the chaos down. It gave me somewhere to put the pain instead of running from it. That's what my book Still Fighting is. Not a success story, a survival story. After I got sober, I fought for my kids. Not just legally. I fought to be stable. I fought to be present. I fought to become someone they could trust again. And eventually, I got them back. But surprisingly, that didn't fix me. But it did give me something to fight for. Like I said before, I'm not going to lie to you, I still deal with anxiety. I still deal with the agoraphobia. But before, I lived in hospitals. Now, I live my life. I can leave the house, I can be with friends, I can be present with my kids. Not perfectly. I still can't go to hockey games or indoor activities like that, like I want to. Like I said, I'm not perfect, but I be there consistently for them. I'm nowhere cured, I'm not finished. I'm still fighting myself every day. And that's the truth. If you're still listening to this right now, thank you. I just want you to know something. There's no clean break between what I just talked about and what I'm about to say. There was no moment where my life collapsed and then suddenly rebuilt itself in a neat motivational arc. It didn't work like that. This part of the story is messier, quieter, harder to explain. Because this is the part where the drugs were gone, but the pain wasn't. The pain was still there. When I finally stopped using, really stopped, there was no celebration, there was no relief, there was just silence. And the silence was absolutely terrifying. Because for years I had used substances to escape my thoughts, my body, my memories, my guilt, my fear. And when all that disappeared at once, I was left alone with myself in a way I had never been before. There was no buffer, no pause button, no escape hatch, just me. I remember thinking, okay, this is sobriety. This is what everyone talks about. And honestly, it didn't feel free. It felt like exposure. Every emotion I had numbed come rushing back. Every regret I avoided showed up at the same time. Every mistake replayed itself in my head like a loop I just couldn't shut off. I wasn't craving drugs as much as I was craving relief, and that scared me. I want to talk about that part for a little bit because people don't talk about it enough. There's this idea that once you get sober, the fight is over. For me, that's when the fight started. Because now I had to learn how to live inside my own body again. Early sobriety didn't feel hopeful, it felt fragile. Every day felt like I was walking on ice, like I was just going to fall through. I was afraid of my thoughts, afraid of my emotions, afraid of my own nervous system. I didn't trust myself yet. I didn't trust that I wouldn't screw it up again. I didn't trust that I could handle discomfort. I didn't trust that I even deserved another chance. And that lack of trust is exhausting. There were days I woke up already tired, not physically, but mentally. Because just existing required effort. Going to the store required effort. Answering the phone required effort. Sitting with anxiety without numbing it required effort. And I remember thinking, is this really what life is going to feel like forever? Is it really? That question haunted me. Now, I want to be honest about something pretty uncomfortable. There were moments in early sobriety where I missed the escape. Not the chaos, not the destruction, but the quiet. The temporary silence. And admitting that was shameful. Because people expect you to hate everything about your past. But the truth is, if substances didn't work at first, none of us would have used them. What mattered was learning why I needed to escape them in the first place. This is where anxiety and agoraphobia were still very much part of my life. Still is. I'm not cured. I wasn't suddenly brave. I still have days where my body told me I was in danger when I'm not. I still had moments where my heart racing made me panic. I still have thoughts that say, what if this happens again? What if I collapse again? The difference is, I don't run every single time. Sometimes I stay. And staying felt, and still feels, unbearable at first. There were days I left the house shaking, days I drove places with convincing myself I wasn't dying. Days I sat with friends but felt disconnected because my body was still scanning for danger. And I want to say this clearly, just because you're sober doesn't mean your nervous system is calm. Sobriety, it doesn't instantly teach your body safety. It teaches you how to practice it. Again, this is where writing became everything for me. Not as a career, not as a product. I don't expect to make any money out of this. I don't want any money out of this. I'm using this to almost help me. As a survival tool. I write because my thoughts wouldn't shut up. I write because I needed somewhere to put the guilt instead of letting it rot inside me. I write because some nights writing is the only thing that kept me from imploding. That's where my book Still Fighting came from. Not from wisdom, but from exhaustion. From sitting in sobriety and realizing the fight isn't over. It had just changed shape. Now, in the book, I didn't write about victory. I wrote about staying. Staying sober on days where I felt empty. Staying present when my mind wanted to disappear. Staying alive when shame told me I didn't deserve to be. Those pages were never meant to be inspirational. They were meant to be honest. One of the hardest parts of sobriety for me was rebuilding the trust. Not with the world, but with myself. I had burned so many bridges, broken so many promises, disappeared so many times. I didn't believe my own words anymore. So I had to rebuild trust the only way it actually works. Through consistency. Showing up. Even when I didn't feel like it. Especially when I didn't feel like it. Fighting for my kids was a huge part of that, and I want to talk about this slowly because this isn't a feel-good moment. Getting my kids back didn't feel like redemption, it felt like responsibility. I wasn't just sober for me anymore. I had to manage my anxiety so I didn't disappear. I had to manage my fear so I didn't isolate. I had to manage my triggers so I didn't go backward. Being with them meant staying regulated, even when I was comfortable. That was new. There were moments where I sat with them and felt overwhelming guilt, not because of what was happening, but because of what I had missed. You don't just get over that. You carry it. And you decide what to do with it. Me, I decided to let it keep me honest. Sobriety taught me something I didn't expect, that the goal isn't to feel good all the time. The goal is to stay present. There are days I still feel anxious, days my body still reacts, days my mind still goes to dark places, but now those days don't own me. They pass, and that's progress. I want to talk directly to any listener who feels disappointed in sobriety. If you thought sobriety would fix everything, you're not wrong for thinking that. But it doesn't. What it does is give you the chance to fix the things honestly. And honesty is harder than numbness. There were moments in early sobriety where I thought, I don't know if I'm strong enough to do this forever. And the truth is, I didn't need to do it forever. I just needed to do it that day. That's where the phrase came from. You don't need to win today. You just can't quit today. That wasn't a slogan. That was survival. I still deal with anxiety. I still deal with agoraphobia. But before I lived in hospitals. Now I live my life. I can leave the house. And this is the part I need to say out loud because it matters. I'm not telling this story from the other side. I'm telling it from inside the fight. I still fight my mind. I still fight fear. I still fight the urge to isolate when things feel heavy, but I don't quit. That's why this podcast exists. Not to teach, not to preach, but to sit with people who are still fighting too. If you're listening to this and thinking, I should be farther along by now, you're not behind. You're still here. And that counts. I didn't become sober and suddenly become fearless. I became sober and learned how to stay scared without running. That's the work. That's the fight. That's the part nobody glamorizes. If you're still listening, I want to thank you. Because listening to something this raw takes effort too. And if you see yourself anywhere in this story, you're not broken. You adapted to survive. Now you're learning how to live. This is the Sober Addict Podcast. You don't need to win today. You just can't quit today. I'll talk to you next time.